everyone, Zenro Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and in today's video we are going to do the state of the meta or state of the Union Arena meta report videos that I do. Now, like you guys know, I usually take 2 to 4 weeks to do these videos just to give the meta some kind of way to shape up. In Union Arena, I always have to say this ahead of time. Recency bias is a thing. If a new deck has come up, then it usually takes some time for everyone to play a bunch of those new decks. So it has been a couple weeks since we got our last set out in the game, and there have been a lot of online tournaments happening even before those sets came out. So I will be using exburst.dev to go through all this data. And once again, like I said, all you have to do is go up here to community, click tournament results. It'll show you all these tournament results, and then you can also, on this same page, post your local tournament results as well. Now that I'm going through this, I forgot to post the 2 recent results from our local tournaments on his as well. So big shout out, sorry to all the guys at Omnicards Lettable Gaming. I know that our last couple locals were just our draft events, so I didn't want to post those on here because I do not take anything that is the rare battles. No rare battles that are posted on here will I take. These have to be only regular tournaments, and if anything only had 4 players, I also do not take those. It has to be at least 6 players, which will cut it down a little bit. I'm not taking any results. If you are posting your data on here, so say like Team Lunty Weekly, which is by Max. If you put this up here, maybe that's Max DePera. Follow his page, by the way. I like Max. He's cool. Just listing this as a player of 4, on here, but maybe not showing how many players were shown up, then that makes it a little bit harder to go through and get all this data. But this seems like a Germany one, so probably not the Max Tapera that we all know and love. But if you only have 4, I don't cover that. It has to be at least 6. But make sure when you do post your tournament results, go on here, put the amount of participants that are on it, and then just only put, whatever deck toppings that you want. That way it gives me a little more information to be able to say, oh, okay, they had, for the Midgard Gaming Weekly, 15 is how they made it, 16 players they had playing all together. And even if they didn't list all these other decks, if you just put that 16 played, that lets me know that 16 different people played in the tournament. And if you only want to add like the top 3, then that's all you kind of, really need to do. But with all that out of the way, let's get into the pie chart breakdown. If you really want to know the cutoff date, it is 8-20 up until now, which is 9-4, so that's been a couple weeks for us to kind of see where some of the decks that recently came out are kind of getting into the play of the meta, and then where some of these new decks are coming out. And I think that we have a lot of happy things to be talking about because this is the pie chart. I do want to put this full screen so we can go over it just a little bit. If everyone wants to soak this in, this is, I think, 46 different deck toppings over the last 3.5-4 weeks on here, and you can see some of the newer decks showing up big time, and then some of the mainstays staying on here as well. Now, the biggest 2 things to see from the pie chart, or the biggest thing to take, right, in Union Arena always, is that this pie chart is always very, very diverse. Just to give the video some, information as well, if you do 8, I take the top 3. If anything is 12 or over, I take the top 4. And if anything is, I think, 16 or 18 over, I'll take, a little bit more than that. Discretion on it always varies. But we have 44 decks, I think, on here. I may have lost count counting it up. But this gives us a big, representation of all the decks that people have topped in their local tournaments. A couple of the tournaments were big enough to take note on. There was a couple that were 16 people. One of the tournaments was 23 people. So each of those, I took 4 decks each from those particular ones. But getting into the pie chart, you can see here that Full Metal Alchemist Roy Mustang and Green Code Geass Suzaku deck are the 2 most prevalent topping decks in the past, you just say month or so in the game, right? About a month of us having a lot of these decks ready. And a lot of these going to be recency bias, right? When I was going through this, the later tournaments had obviously a lot of the toppings coming for Roy, just to give you guys a premise of that. And then the last couple of 2 weeks of tournaments, most of the tops came from Suzaku. So just to show you guys that there are some difference, I think in one of the tournaments, a Roy got second and a Suzaku got first. So just showing that, they can play against each other meta. I think these are 2 of the decks that a lot of people are looking at to do really, really well in the current game. And if I had to, say one that is definitely shining. It is Suzaku, but also one of the more recent, newer decks, right? So I did expect this to be a little bit higher than it probably will be in the next coming weeks, because then a lot of people will have gotten their testing in and then realizing what they want to do with the deck. So a lot of decks are recency bias, and with this being a newer deck, I think that definitely has a lot to do with the play rate, that people are going to take it into the tournaments and getting all their testing in and then deciding if they want to continue with the deck. So I do really look forward to seeing over the next 2 to 4 weeks where Suzaku settles in the meta before we get our next sets coming out into the game, right? But Suzaku and Roy Mustang taking up 10, 11% of the meta, respectively, being the two topping decks. If we want to get into the details of the numbers, of course, I have those ready for y'all. And both of them got 5 tops throughout this, 3-week span. About each of these decks getting 5 tops shows that they are consistent and powerful enough. And one of the surprising things is obviously the recency of Suzaku. In like 4 out of the 6 recent tournaments, I think 4 of those tops came from just the recent tournaments alone, showing that Suzaku is really popular right now, that people are, playing against it into a lot of these meta decks and trying to figure out where he stands. I think that the new support of the new cycle engine with the draw 1, trash 1, 0 drop that they have now, the new Nunnally being able to let you generate that extra energy if you have 4 cards on the back line, and the new addition of the 4-cost mech also giving you, some good leeway into like being able to just, be a strong deck early game, mid game, and late game. I think that Suzaku has a little bit of everything going for him now. Recursion, good color trigger. He is an awesome deck, and if you're looking for a good green deck, I think that at the moment Suzaku is the premier green deck to play in the game. He can, if he eye rolls, he beats every deck in the game, and even if he doesn't now, he has a chance in a lot of these games because the 4-drop new mech can just get you there. I don't have much more to say about Roy. Everyone knows that Roy is super consistent. I do think that now that some of these new decks coming up can give Roy a little bit of a headache being a little bit faster. I think that we have a nice mix-up in the meta. People just love Roy Mustang. He is a fan favorite in the show for Full Metal Alchemist, but his control potential in the game is just so insanely strong. And I think that Suzaku having the mech that lets you add the Suzaku back to your hand makes your plays into Roy feel a lot better, right? Roy has to waste a lot of resources to be able to kill your mech, and then if he does kill the mech, then you get your Suzaku back to your hand, and then lets you be able to further your plays, maybe on the next turn to go into your 8-drop mech, clearing their Roy and being able to push for that 2 damage. So just to give you guys a little input on the meta, I am just trying to report the pie chart here, but I would be remiss to not at least give you guys some of the information there. Now, bringing up, technically second place, first place tie between Roy and Suzaku, getting 5 tops. Blue JJK and Purple Bleach, both getting 4 tops in the last couple weeks in recent tournaments. And I think that that is something to say, these 2 decks will stand the test of time. I do think that along with Purple Geass, spoilers, it's on the list. I know a lot of people are saying that this deck is not good or don't believe it anymore, or all these things. I've been getting to kind of some conversations, good healthy conversations in different discords about people not believing in Purple Geass, but it's still definitely a really strong deck. But I do think that those 3 decks are the 3 decks that kind of have stand the test of time. But the new support for, Purple Bleach and Blue JJK, I do think powered up these decks in a sense to where I don't think that Purple Geass got the same level of support in these, Volume 2 versions of their decks, where both of these decks got a humongous power up in their Volume 2s, where Purple Geass did not get that same quite level of power up, and I think that that's what's keeping it lacking behind a little bit. But I personally do still love the matchup of Purple Code into a lot of these decks, as long as you're able to, do some creative deck building. I do think that deck building in Purple Geass is a little bit harder to do than it is these other decks, whereas a lot of these other decks, you're just running a lot of the same copies of certain cards. The Purple Bleach, I did not distinguish whether you were running a Squad 0 package or the older stuff. It's just if it was that kind of deck, that's what all these decks are. So if you wanted to separate this, I think that 2 of them were the old Bleach and the other 3 were the Squad 0. But Blue JJK does have a different ways to, you can build the big 7-drop Sukuna, or you could just stay low to the ground with the Nanami builds, or you could just go straight Yuji Sukuna stuff as good. The tail is all the time, right? The deck's not going anywhere. But both of these decks getting 4 different tops shows that they're not going anywhere. They're really, really strong decks. People still love playing them, and you got to look out for them going into the future of what our meta is. And this is the part I really love to get into, is what are the decks that are on that next level, right? We have a lot of different decks that all got 2 different tops throughout these tournaments, and that is a really cool thing to think about, right? I'm going to go through these really quick and then like touch up on certain cards and decks. So throughout the last couple weeks, we've had Full Metal Alchemist, the Purple Homunculus deck get 2 different tops. The Full Metal Alchemist, the Elric's Brothers deck get 2 different tops. Green Sword Art Online getting 2 different tops. Red Code Geass, the Academy deck, did get new support. It also got 2 tops. Purple JJK Toto deck getting 2 tops. Purple JJK Toto Mech, that is the same one, so I need to take that one off. There we go. Purple Kogias getting 2 tops. Blue Sword Art Online getting 2 tops. Blue Bleach getting 2 tops. Yellow Sword Art Online Goddess / Integrity Knights decks, 2 tops. And then yellow SAO, just the straight Integrity Knight decks, 2 tops. Now this particular deck I did separate here. If you want to combine these 2 together, you can. The only reason I did separate these though is because I do think that these decks are different enough in where it's like a 12 to 16 card package that separates these 2 decks. And I think that that makes them a lot different of, you know, having to distinguish these decks as opposed to like the Purple Bleach deck. So that's my reasoning behind that. If you guys rather me not do that, please just, you know, let me know. I will definitely try to, like, you know, update that a little bit, change it some. But I think that that deck is distinguished enough to where I do need to separate it, where I don't feel the same way about the Purple Bleach deck. I think that's kind of the same deck. And even though the, you know, Integrity Knights / Goddess Knights decks do run a lot of the same cards, the, you know, if you go straight into the Knights package, that's 8 different raids that you're running outside of 8 different raids for the Goddess deck, just to give some, you know, information on that. But if you want to take these as both the same deck, that would technically put that deck, you know, as one of the top decks in the format, because if you combined them both together, it would put them at 4, putting them at a tie with Blue JJK and Purple Bleach. So definitely a powerhouse of a deck and archetype that you need to watch out for. I think that these decks lead for creative deck building. They are very fun to play with, and the resource of having either a high defensive wall with the straight Integrity Knights deck, or low to the ground, take your own life for value and push, you know, some of these build 'em up decks out of the game before they can really get there. I think that that's what the Goddess deck does a little bit better. But definitely a separation between these 2, but definitely a deck to look out for. And I know a lot of people aren't talking about this deck, and I even, please check out my recent video where I gave you guys my, you know, preface to this video. I wanted to do a, you know, preemptive tier list video of giving you guys my honest opinions before I made this particular video. And in doing so, now I can see where I was kind of right on some things and where I was wrong, right? No one's right. Everything's opinionated based, but I do feel pretty good and solid about where I did put the, you know, the yellow SAO deck. And I think I got a lot of flack in the comments for the last video about that, people not believing. But these decks do always top. They are very, very solid. I think they just don't get played as much as other decks. And that's one thing to look at here to say, you know, that shows how strong they are. They don't get played as much, and these decks still consistently top. And I think that people are sleeping on the yellow Sword Art Online decks. But going through a lot of other decks, I'm not trying to spend too many time on all these certain decks. But Blue Bleach showing up is really cool. I know a lot of people love this deck. I do think that some players who were playing this deck maybe got off of this deck to test out the new blue deck that we have, which is the Chinese Federation deck. And I think a lot of those people are probably upset because I don't think both those decks play the same at all. And if you're used to playing Blue Bleach, it does not translate to you playing the, you know, the blue Code Geass, Chinese Federation, or the, you know, straight stun version of those decks. They are very different in how they play, even though the same concept of stunning your opponent down does kind of sit there, right? But Blue Bleach being a good stun deck. Blue Sword Art Online, people keep sleeping on this deck. I do think that this is the premier aggro deck in the game. I still believe in that. It is really strong. It keeps getting tops, and people need to respect this deck. If you don't, that's what happens, and now it shows up top in tournaments like this, right? And I already touched on Purple Coat Geass. There's not a lot to say about it. I do think that the new 2 cost 5 energy color trigger does a decent amount for the deck, but not enough to power it up and keep it in line with some of these other decks. But a deck that you can take into any tournament knowing that you're going to do pretty well. Toto took a kind of step back from the recent tournaments, and I think it's just because a lot of people are playing some other decks with some of the new toys in Roy Mustang and Suzaku showing up in the card game, and I think that's taken a couple players off of Toto, but I do think that Toto slash Mekamaru is a really strong deck. Now, the Academy deck did get 2 really good cards of support that help give it a little bit better of an early game where you're not so reliant on seeing your stage card. And I think that that has made a lot of people get some revival into the deck. I think that this is a good rogue tier, low to the ground, easy to play deck that has a little bit of creative deck building now that we got a little bit of a package in the new Code Geass Volume 2 set. Green Sword Art Online, it's here. A lot of people just are not playing this deck, I think, because they know that the new support coming out makes the deck so much better, but the deck is still really, really strong right now. It does a really good job at controlling your board. I do think that maybe it is a little fragile compared to what people are expecting the deck to be. You do have to be very mindful of your plays. It is definitely, I think, better than Kurapika, but it has a lot more consistency. And with these control style of decks, where I don't think Suzaku is the same way. Suzaku is just like a blow your board up, swinging for big damage, kind of build 'em up green deck. And I think that the green SAO Kurapika style decks are more control-y, and so your plays matter more, and you really have to be very specific on your timing of when you do your raid characters and when you get your maximum value off of them, where you're always just getting value off of Suzaku. And I think that that makes these decks a little bit harder to pilot, so people don't have as much fun with them, and the variance in like how well a player is on this deck does determine a lot for the Green Sword Art Online deck. Now, going to the Full Metal Alchemist decks, the Elric Brothers yellow kind of decks. I know a lot of these decks are also incorporating greed and stuff like that. These 2 decks, I kept them as like, you know, in the same thing. I don't know a ton enough about the decks to really separate them, so I kept them together. But that is these decks. And then I am very happy and very, very surprised to see, you know, the Purple Homunculus engine doing really well. Now, this does have a recency bias. Both of these 4 tops did come from the week that the like sets, like after the set came out, very shortly after that, and only one of the tournaments, I think, had a recent topping of the last week, and that was the Elric Brothers deck. So something to look forward to see if people do try to stay on the Purple Homunculus decks. Those were 2 weeks ago, one of the tops being, you know, just a week and a half ago. But both of these, I think Full Metal Alchemist is kind of like, it was a hyped on IP, but you don't see a ton of people playing the decks at the moment. Just being very interesting, unique mechanics in all the decks, and it takes a little bit more time to play those. So the longer these decks are out, the more we can see people doing well with them, I believe. So that is all the decks that got 2 toppings, and now it brings us to the next tier of decks where we are down to the 1 of toppings, right? And with that being said, I will go through the list real quick. Green One Punch Man Saitama, 3 ladies in red, the Red Black Clover 3 ladies deck, Red One Punch Man Speedo Sound Sonic, the Attack on Titan, Red Attack Titan deck, Levi deck, the Green Titan deck, and Historia all got 1 topping. And this was not a rare battle event. These all came from separate different tournaments. I think the Green Titan deck actually won one of the tournaments, which was very surprising. But all of these decks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all getting 1 topping in the past tournaments. And it's really cool to see that. You know, I definitely did not give any credence to a, you know, Attack on Titan green deck. I think this tournament was like 8 people. But if the deck does see its cards and gets there, it does prevent that humongous wall and win potential. And so big shout outs to whoever it was that did top with this Green Titan deck. I don't have a lot of hope for that deck. I didn't give it a very high grading, but it still does have that late game win potential where if you do, I think, just see a lot of good hands and your opponent is kind of slow on things, I'd be very interesting to maybe like do a deck profile video about this deck to see just how they built the deck. Maybe I can find out who the pilot was and let's get some breakdown on this, because I don't think a lot of people foreseen this deck maybe doing a lot. And so big shout out to them for believing in this deck and finding a way to make it work. The ceiling is definitely there for the deck, right? I just think that if people know what you're playing, and maybe a lot of people just don't know what the Titans deck's trying to do, but you need to just kill them before they get to the big Titan. Historia getting a top. I don't think there's any surprises there. I am actually kind of disappointed to see Historia and Levi only get one top. I know these are newer decks, so a lot of people are probably having a hard time getting these decks built, because if it was like anything at our locals, these were two of the most popular decks. A lot of people couldn't even get the decks built because everybody wanted the cards. But I think that these are two decks that you will see go into the future consistently get tournament toppings. Levi not being as consistent, but just having this crazy high ceiling to win out games, and Historia just being so consistent. And if you like this play style of just going through your deck a lot, drawing cards, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and being super consistent, you would love the Historia deck. And the Attack on Titan red deck getting a top. This deck has a very strong way to end games. Really cool to see that, a good showing from all the Attack on Titan decks, and could be a recency bias. It'd be cool to see how they go going forward. But the red One Punch Man Saitama, Speed of Sound Sonic deck, the three ladies in red, and the green One Punch Man Saitama, bringing up the rear here of all the other decks that got one. Love to see the three ladies red. I do think this is a big pilot-oriented deck. It is really, really powerful, though, for the people who know how to pilot the deck. Green Punch Man 1 Saitama. I think that this deck is just a little figured out. The power ceiling is there. I think a lot of people are just still so hyped about this deck, and I do think it is a strong deck. I don't think it's a bad deck by any means. I think I put it in, tier 1, just not one of the best decks in the format outside of one of my rankings. And I'll do a comparative video next. I'm trying to get this one out pretty quick. I do have to work later, but One Punch Man Saitama, if you just know how to play against it, it's not as strong. I promise you. I know a lot of people probably at their locals are tired of seeing this, and maybe they have a couple people who keep playing it and they just don't know what to do, but just rush the deck down, kill the double energy generators, and I promise your life will be a lot better. But Speedo Salad Sonic, I think, would just randomly get tops every now and then. It is just a really good aggro deck. I think not one of the best ones. I think a couple other decks does what it does better, but it does it in a unique way where sometimes you are just, the play of being able to keep one of your Speedo Salad Sonic safe is a big deal. And as long as you don't hit a color trigger this deck, or any trigger that's going to mess with your characters, you will have a good time. But that is the pie chart. Let me know what you guys think about this. I will do a video comparing the pie chart to my, meta tier list prediction video, and then give you guys a better breakdown of what the meta is. I will update that tier list to reflect, my opinions, but also more of what this pie chart says. And I look forward to the game. It's so much fun. We got more, IPs coming out. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about the video, what you guys think about these decks that are topping at the moment, and how do you feel about the current meta game. I think that Union Arena does have one of the best meta games out of every card game, because so many decks are viable, and you would be hard-pressed to find any other card game with this many decks that are able to top in tournaments. But don't forget to leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me today. Peace.